Whispering Woods is at war. Genevieve Joyce and her team at the Haven are battling infection and disease as avian influenza spread. The entire zoo is on lockdown to ensure the health of animals, guests, and staff. Construction on the dome slows, and Charlotte Baker warns it may need to stop altogether as profits plummet. In South America, Jimena Alvarez is doing her best to save as many animals as she can in the wake of SylvaCorp's destruction. Much to everyone's dismay, another emergency situation pops up in the Pampas region. Headed by SylvaCorp's newest hire, Edmund Joyce, the company wants to extract as much limestone and granite as possible, decimating even more animal habitats. Faced with a tough decision, Arthur Joyce decides to travel to the farmland region and talk some sense into his brother, while Anna Kingston remains behind in the rainforests to continue work with the volunteers. There certainly won't be an easy way out of this for anyone. Welcome back to Whispering Woods Wildlife Haven. Hey everyone, Sparrow here. Thank you for joining me for the continuation of the South America Dome at Whispering Woods. If you missed last week's episode, we put together a non-walkthrough sloth exhibit. So basically just made it look as if it was its own enclosure. And we also created a home for the giant anteater. Today, we'll be putting together a fun enclosure for 4 capybara who have recently been rescued from South America. And I say fun because it is going to be their own personal hot spring. This is very much inspired by the Capybara onsen or hot springs at Izushiboten Zoo in Japan. So I took a lot of inspiration from that, as you can probably tell from some of the materials being used. I don't know, I just thought it was such a fun idea, and also because it is inside of the tropical dome, so we could keep it very, very nice and warm in here for the capybaras. I'm mostly using the Twilight Masonwork walls. You can see that's running all the way down the edge of the dome as a planter, and then this building here will allow guests some views into the capybara holding. Guests will be able to see this building as they walk in through a secondary entrance just past the bush dog enclosure. So that will be coming eventually, but for now we will be designing the interior of the dome. Just trying to position this Oceanian roof. This piece is off the grid, and while I love working with it, sometimes it actually makes it a lot more difficult to work with because the rotational axis is a little bit off. But luckily we're able to put that together, and then I'll just add some supports so that it doesn't look like it's floating. Here I'm creating a little stream. This went through many reworks in order to make it happen. So the little stream will run along the edge of the pathway and open up into a larger pond towards the right. This will create a little bit of a gap between the guests and the capybara. But as you can see, I had to really play around with it, as you usually do whenever you're working with water, in order to get the water level correct. Once all those edges have been smoothed out and I'm decently happy with how it looks, I'm going to set up some glass barriers so that we can actually keep the water in here. So here I'm just going to do some testing, making sure that all of the barriers are about the same level, because this will allow me to find out where the water level is going to lie specifically, and if I need to raise any of the terrain in order to make that happen. So yeah, the water is a little bit too high, so I'm going to raise this building so that it's at about the edge. The capybara will actually be able to enter the hot springs through that little break in the wall as well. And then I'm going to make this upper pool using our glass barrier pieces. And unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't want to work for you. So you move each panel down separately, and then eventually it does work. A little bit of extra time, but I'm very happy with the results. And now that we've got our water in, which is probably the most difficult part of this enclosure, I'm going to line all of that with rocks. This long flat rock is one of my favorites. It fills up quite a lot of space very quickly, which is always nice. And then these flatter rocks I like because they can create this sort of stratified look. Here we have some steps that are descending into the hot springs, and we'll do the same thing at this gap in the wall so that the capybara can access from multiple points. Of course, we're also going to line the bottom of the stream with some faux rocks to add some dimension. And we're using a new technique, at least a new to me technique this episode as well, and lining up these Oceanian rock walls underneath. So just a little bit of it is peeking out and creating this sort of texture on the bottom of the stream. Have to be really careful not to show too many of the edges, but the nice thing about this being underwater is that you can always add more full rocks around to hide those edges, or you can add things like fallen leaves on top of the water or little underwater plants, and then that will help to hide all of that as well. Here we have our two pools, one slightly higher than the other, little waterfall going from one to the next, as well as a bunch of hot water taps for a capybara, and then a small stone staircase that they'll be able to use to travel from one to the other. Now is the moment of truth. Can they actually access all of these things? So let's get a capybara in here and see how they do. So quick update, we don't actually have enough water in this enclosure, which is surprising because you would think there's enough accessible water. So what I'm going to do up here above those two pools is we're actually going to create a third pool, and it's going to be even taller. And this will sort of be a private, sheltered hot tub area for the capybara. Once again, using glass to make sure that we'll be able to get water up here. And I was really struggling with making this symmetrical, so this will go through a few iterations before we finally are able to make our capybara hot tub. Finally got the water in, and I'm going to outline that with that same mason work wall just to fit it in with the current building. Those top pieces I'm actually going to remove because we're going to be filling up this area with some plants to kind of screen the hot tub off from the viewing area and make sure that it is quite private for our capybaras. Once again, moving the whole thing was not working, but once again, moving one panel at a time was working just fine. So if you're ever struggling with placing water, this is my biggest trick. Finally, a ramp that will allow the animals to access this pool, just making sure it's nice and perpendicular to that wall. And we'll add some concrete for the walkway up. Now it's almost time for planting, but before we can do that, I'm going to add mulch along here so that we can hide the ugly construction underneath. And before we do get to planting, there is one last thing to take care of, and that's making sure that the animals can't escape into the rest of the South America dome. These are two concrete panels that I've put together, and I'm just going to line the path along here and the other viewing area to make sure that there's no dirt peeking out in between, making it a nice seamless edge. For the barriers, I'm using thin glass once again. I have never used a different kind of glass. I don't know, these ones just always work for me. And as the attachment between the glass and the pole, I'm using some of the new Fiesta theme pieces. These are just some metal brackets, and in between them, I'm going to slip one of these Indonesian timbers, which happen to fit perfectly. That's looking quite lovely, and I'm quite happy with it, so I'm going to line the viewing area with this fence. And then it's finally time to get to our planting. Lots of fun tropical foliage in this one as well, adding some more acai palms. These ones are some of my favorite tropical ones, as well as banana palms, and then plenty of the common reeds. Thankfully, I had some sections of the land already blocked off because the capybaras either couldn't access it, or I had placed some temple ruins in a few little places to add some more interest. So the common reeds go there because they are non-traversable anyway, and this way they're not taking away from the traversable area. To help this wall blend into the enclosure, I'm going to add some of the liana vines. These hot water taps, unfortunately, the three that you see right now, are not accessible to the capybaras. I'm not entirely sure why. I fiddled around with it quite a lot. I thought maybe the water wasn't deep enough, maybe they're just not far enough away from the wall. but yeah, couldn't make them accessible. So really the only hot water tap the capybaras can use is that one on the far right in the upper pool. So if you know why that's happening, I would really love to hear, because it would be really fun if they could access all of the hot water taps. Finally, screening off this hot tub with lots of tree ferns and hedges. And the eelgrass actually proved to be great in filling out this planter because it's nice, it's bright, and it's a short plant, which is just perfect. The Cecropia plant makes a return, of course. We're going to make sure it spruces things up with some more tropical flair. And lastly, this long planter at the back. Plenty of bright bromeliads back here. It's a very thin space, so there were not very many plants that fit. The elephant ear number 2 works well because the leaves fan out to one side only, so that was perfect for this area. And plenty of flowers in this enclosure as well. I just recolored the ones that are recolorable to white to add a little bit more brightness. And the buddleia came in amazingly well here because it is skinny enough to fit and helps to fill out these empty areas without drawing attention away from the brighter foliage. Finally, it wouldn't make sense to have this many plants in here without some fallen leaves, and we're ready to show off our capybara hot springs. We love when life imitates art, as we saw with our capybara statue and actual capybaras. They are absolutely loving their hot springs so far. You can see them swimming in one of the pools up here and also wandering on the land. These guys are so cute. Some of their interactions are absolutely adorable. And I did finally catch one of the capybaras using those stone steps between the pools, which was super fun to see. They are also loving their private hot spring up here and just generally living the life in their new home. Here's a quick fly through of today's build. I am super happy with how this turned out. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and of course make sure you leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. It really helps me out a lot. If you'd like to help me out a little bit extra, feel free to join the Nest, which is our channel membership, to see your name on this wall. Next week we'll be adding a multi-species habitat, so leave me your best guesses down below, and I will see you next time. Bye!